Hi, good day everybody. This is Jeff Wallace from Global Kinetics. I'd like to thank everybody for taking time out of their busy schedules to join us today for a discussion about leveraging Internet of Things and wearable technology to revolutionize service ethics. We're going to go through a presentation over the next 45 minutes where I'm going to share a couple examples, and I'll also ask for an audience vote at one point a few minutes in. So you'll see I'll put a vote up on the screen, and at that time it'd be great if everybody would just read the question, cast their vote. It's super simple, and then we'll just continue the discussion. Also, with any regard to any questions, please feel free to type your questions into the web screen here. Those questions will be queued up, and I'll address all the questions towards the end of the presentation so that I don't distract the flow. And other than that, again, just want to thank everybody, and let's jump right into it. So as we put out there and publicized, we're going to talk about a few examples today where Internet of Things can really be addressed in very simple and relatable use cases. Doesn't need to be a very complex solution or solving complex problems. We're going to hear about 3 examples where I think a very simple solution, leveraging Internet of Things, IoT, and wearables, can really solve and show solve some interesting challenges and show some tremendous benefits for the companies and for the clients that get a chance to engage with it. Specifically, the use cases we'll discuss involve the restaurant and hospitality industry. We'll also talk about a healthcare or hospital type of use case. And then thirdly, we'll speak about a manufacturing or a production line use case. So with that, I'm going to just start off by talking about when we talk about revolutionizing service ethics, well, what do we really mean by service ethics itself? Service ethics means always giving your best, always giving 100%. And unlike the sign that's shown here on the screen, it doesn't mean giving 100% across 5 days. It means giving 100% each and every day, each and every minute. Because as we understand, in today's competitive world, customer service and speed of service are showing themselves to be real, true competitive differentiators and able to provide great competitive advantage for those companies that are able to really focus on and deliver on the promise of improved customer service and speed of service. In fact, we have seen example after example where making market improvements in the overall service ethics or the service experience from the perspective of the customers can truly lead to competitive advantage and real enhanced bottom line results. In fact, the CIO of Dell Computers was recently quoted as saying that the customer experience is going to be the next competitive battleground. And we certainly believe that IoT and wearables are 2 technologies that can be brought to bear to address these challenges in these areas. So imagine if we were having this discussion while we were at a restaurant for perhaps either an Outback Steakhouse or a Cheesecake Factory. I'm sure just about everybody on the line has probably been to one of these places, and if your experience is anything like mine, you find that these places are fairly crowded. And suppose we had finished a round of drinks and we wanted to get a second round of drinks, or maybe we just needed to get our bill and our check so that we could get out of here and go on to other things during the rest of our day. So we would look around and we would try to find our server. And again, if your experience is anything like mine, in these environments, it's often the case where you just aren't able to locate your server in a quick way because the place is very, very busy. And that's just the way the kind of restaurant environment is in certain restaurants like the ones we're talking about. And if you would imagine, we keep looking and looking, we're looking at our watches, we're probably getting a little bit impatient, we're getting a little frustrated. All we want to do is attract the attention of our server. And the question is, why is this so difficult for us? So, as you can see, some people take to extreme measures to attract the attention of the server. We're hoping that leveraging IoT and wearables will allow us to find less invasive ways of doing that. So I'm going to put a vote up on the screen, and just again by a quick question, if you can answer this vote, I'll give it about a minute or so for everybody to just read the question and key in your answer. But really the question is just how often are you at a restaurant and have challenges finding your waiter or waitress to request something, be it another round of drinks, your bill, or generally some other type of service. So again, I'll give it a minute for everybody to just key in their results. Okay, I'm going to hope everybody's had enough time to just answer that. Even just looking at the tally, it looks like most people have said either often, sometimes, or rarely, but it's not never. No one has really never experienced this, and it doesn't look like it's always happening to people either, which is probably a good thing. But it does seem to be happening a fair amount of times. And if we can find something that can help us address this and make it easier and an improved service experience for all of us, that'd be something I think all of us would probably be interested in. So what if, as customers, we could quietly summon our server on demand? Imagine if you could have an on-demand waiter or waitress at your disposal. And what if we could notify them such that it's an immediate notification, and it doesn't just let them know we need them, it lets them know specifically what our need is. So they would have a mechanism to understand exactly what we needed. Furthermore, imagine if from the time we make our request to the time that service is provided to us, there's a time watch or a time clock being measured to show the time from the request until the service is delivered to us. And there's automatic escalations that keep track of and make those escalations happen if the service isn't provided in a timely fashion. Lastly, I'm sure you can imagine if we had the capability to do this in a restaurant environment, it would certainly enhance and improve our customer experience and therefore provide a positive benefit for the restaurant environment as well. As you can see, sometimes our needs in restaurants can be quite urgent, and we don't have the luxury of time to wait for someone to provide us the service we need. So if you were the restaurant owner, imagine if you could increase your average check size. That's a very, very powerful metric in the restaurant industry. Looking at the number of tables that a restaurant has, it's obviously a finite number, and if you are able to increase the average check size for each seating at a table, certainly that has phenomenal benefits for the bottom line of the restaurant. Furthermore, imagine if as a restaurant you could turn your tables faster. Probably an equally important metric in the restaurant business is how many times during say a breakfast, lunch, or dinner, or just over the course of a day, are you able to serve one particular table. So if each group that comes in takes an hour and you're open for 10 hours, you get 10 turns. Imagine if you're open for 10 hours and you can get each group down to less than an hour, and you can get 11, 12, maybe even 13 or 14 servings at that table during the day. Certainly, it increases the revenue of the restaurant, and if you combine that with increasing the average check size, it's fantastic benefits for the restaurant to be able to do this. Furthermore, imagine if you could optimize your staff's responsiveness. Certainly, people will have a favorable opinion, more so, if they are provided with very quick and action-oriented responsiveness to their requests. In this day and age of ratings on services like Yelp and other ratings environments out there, Urban, Spoon, et cetera, in the restaurant space, there's certainly a few others, Open Table. As you see these kinds of ratings happen, these types of things, experiences within the restaurant environment, certainly impact how your customers view you. Furthermore, imagine if you had, as the restaurant owner or operator, a real-time dashboard that showcased your service performance for that moment. That moment in time, you can see the kinds of requests that are coming in. You can see how responsive your wait staff is being to those requests in real time so that you can take actionable results or actions right there to address it. Not only do you have access, if you were a restaurant owner, not only would you like to have access to real-time visibility to service performance, but imagine if you were able to collect this data on a everyday, ongoing basis and conduct analytics so that you can then notice and find indications where you can make operational improvements and where you can drive your operational decision-making based upon real collected data from your restaurant environment. If you could do all of this as a restaurant owner, you'd not only have more satisfied customers, but you would have dramatically improved bottom-line results. And this is exactly what restaurants need. It's a very, very competitive environment, as you would imagine, and it's one where differentiating based on these kinds of factors can be very, very powerful. So how can IoT and wearables help drive better service experiences? So we talked earlier about summoning a server on demand to minimize the wait time. So imagine if a device like the one shown here was sitting on the table that you were dining at, and I'll read those buttons to you. It's probably not very clear, but there's a bill button, a services button, a drinks button, and a cancel button. So if we were having this discussion and we needed to get our bill so that we can get on to the rest of our day, we could simply push the bill button on this device sitting on our table. And as I mentioned earlier, if the wait staff were able to be immediately notified with specific requests, not just, hey, table such and such needs you, but if they could see on this watch, and again, it might not be clear, so I'll read it to you. It says, table 3 has made a request for bill, and table 1 has made a request for drinks. So this would be a watch worn by the wait staff, the waiters and waitresses, so that when any of the tables pushed those buttons on their respective tables on that device, they would be able to be immediately notified of the table number and the specific request that came from the table. We talked earlier about a real-time dashboard. Imagine there's this kind of data collection device that leads and promotes this data to a dashboard that's on a screen, perhaps in the back office, if you will, and the restaurant manager or the operations or floor manager can actually see all of these requests. And you can see different color requests here. And so, for instance, the top left request is a green request that says bill. And it shows, I believe, 40-some seconds. And it's green because it's under 1 minute. They turn orange, like the one to the right of that one, when it goes beyond 1 minute. And this can certainly be configurable in certain environments. You might need to adjust those times when things go from green to orange to red, which is a really high escalation. And those escalations can be automated so that restaurant management, operations or floor managers can be notified, and then the actual restaurant manager can be notified in extreme cases. So this real-time dashboard is very, very powerful. And when you can combine that with periodic analytics and operational awareness, this shows over a period of time the hours during the day that are most busy. It can show the days over the course of a period of time, and you can specify time periods within these reports and analytics that you can, kind of take a slice of the data over a specified period of time and see what's been going on within your restaurant environment. Again, very, very powerful for a restaurant operator to be able to look at this type of data and to be able to drive the operational decision-making based upon real-world data from their own environment. Certainly, if we can have all of that as restaurant operators, you can imagine that there would be tremendously improved customer service experiences. So let's take another example if we can. I talked about hospital and patient care as another example. So imagine if for some reason we were in a hospital and we had to have some overnight procedure, so we were in a room, checked into our room in the hospital. And certainly, as you can imagine, there may come a point during our hospital stay where we need to summon the nurse and get the nurse's attention. And as you probably know, on the back of most of the hospital beds, there's a button, and you would call that button, and you would just push the button. And if the nurse were at the nursing station he or she would see on the indicator at the nursing station that you had requested assistance. It would indicate what room needs assistance. It wouldn't indicate more than that, but it would indicate to them, if they were at the nurse's station, that you in your room needed assistance. But what happens in the case where the nurse is not at the nursing station and they're unable, obviously, at that point to see the indicator on the screens that you need help? And what if, in addition to that, they had multiple rooms requesting assistance, and maybe they were at the nursing station and 3 or 4 rooms requested assistance in the same time frame? How would he or she prioritize who to attend to? And again, not being at the nursing station would change this entire timeline in terms of how quickly they would be able to respond to any of those rooms that were requesting help, let alone knowing which ones needed, how to prioritize which ones needed help faster. So, of course, nurses are already overworked people. We know that it's a very busy profession, and adding these kinds of challenges to the nurse's environment is certainly not helpful. So anything we can do, potentially, again, leveraging IoT and wearables to help nurses improve the patient care that they're able to provide would certainly be better. So once again, similarly to being a customer in the restaurant, imagine if as a patient in a hospital, we were able to remotely indicate to the nurse the type of help we needed. So we could specify the type of help we needed, not just pushing a button indicating we needed some form of help. Furthermore, again, similar and analogous to the waiter or waitress in the restaurant environment, imagine if that nurse were able to be notified immediately of not only our need for assistance, but the specific type of assistance we were requesting, and it didn't matter where on the ward they were located. So they wouldn't need to be at the nursing station in order to get the notification that we needed a specific type of help that we would have requested. And once again, imagine if that time, and certainly in this environment here in a hospital-type environment, the time from a request for assistance to when that service or that assistance is provided can be truly a matter of life and death. And so we have to be very conscious of the time of how long it takes for somebody to respond to a request for assistance in this environment, a bit more urgently, of course, than in the restaurant environment. But nonetheless, having the ability, if as a patient we knew that when the minute we pushed that request for service button, there was a timer that was started and that there were escalations, even to our very own doctor, if need be. It would go to the nurse's station or the nurse initially, then it would go to the head of the nursing, then it would go maybe to the doctor on the ward, then it would go to my doctor, in an urgent case of escalation. So you could certainly imagine if these things were in place, I think the overall patient care experience would certainly be improved. And all of us as patients would enjoy the fact and the knowledge and have some comfort knowing that we had these capabilities. So certainly we think that by being able to bring these types of capabilities to a patient environment, it certainly can help improve those patient care experiences, in addition to helping nurses themselves have a better capability of prioritizing and knowing how to go about their business. So if you were the nurse or the hospital and you could be notified, again, anywhere on the ward, so that you didn't need to be sitting in front of the nurse's station seeing that screen light up that a certain patient in a certain room had requested help, that would be of great value, and very likely it could help reduce the stress that a nurse is experiencing at that time. These are obviously very high-stress environments. It would also allow these nurses to prioritize their patient assistance calls. So if 3 or 4 calls came in simultaneously, and they could differentiate between the calls, which ones were more urgent, for example, in terms of medical urgency, they would know how to better prioritize. And again, this would be much of a stress-relieving situation for a nurse, knowing that they're attending to the right patients in the right timeliness. So that real-time dashboard, again, showing the patient attentiveness, how attentive we were to patients. And of course, healthcare itself is also a very competitive environment. It's certainly not substantially different than the restaurant environment in that sense, in that hospitals and doctors and nurses and experiences that people have end up on ratings. And there are websites that exist solely for the purpose of rating patient experiences at hospitals and how doctors and nurses and the hospitals themselves take care of the patients that are in their care. So having access to a real-time dashboard showcasing this kind of attentiveness, again, with some escalations built in, would be very, very powerful. And again, similar again to the restaurant environment, not only is that real-time information very, very powerful, but having that data collected over a long period of time, which can then be analyzed and leveraged to drive staffing as well as other operational decisions within the nurses or the hospital environment, be very, very strong and powerful for hospitals to have this kind of visibility and this kind of information at their fingertips. So we believe, even from the nursing perspective, this would improve the nurses' experience by offering them opportunities to reduce stress because they'll have tools at their disposal that can help them do that. It would certainly improve the patient care experiences, and we would like, obviously, as potential patients in any environment, hopefully none of us need this, but at some point in our lives, all of us probably will need some form of medical care or patient care, and it would certainly be nice to know that those environments had tools at their disposal to make our experiences and our patient care improved from where it is today in most environments. So what do these technologies look like? Again, summoning a nurse on demand, regardless of the location. Again, that's a very powerful component to this, is regardless of the location on the ward, so that we can reduce patient times. So here we have clean, we have service, and we have SOS, or nurse and SOS. Now, if a patient pushes SOS, obviously that takes on a higher priority, and you can see here the immediate notification with, again, the detailed requirements of the patient comes straight to a watch that is being worn by the nursing staff on the hospital ward. So they can see room 2 has pushed SOS about 10 seconds ago, and room 1 has asked for a request for cleaning of some sort 1 minute and 30 seconds ago. And so, again, the priorities here become very, very obvious. If the nurse happens to be with a patient doing something not urgent or not critical and sees an SOS request come in, they can immediately excuse themselves and go attend to that patient that requires SOS help. So very, very strong contributor to improving patient experiences. Again, we talked about that real-time dashboard using some form of data collection device like the one shown here on top of the dashboard itself, as well as the dashboard, again, showing the differentiation between colors, which also have built-in escalation paths. So in the case where a nurse was requested in the red ball on the top right, this would have been escalated to the head of nursing at this point. If it were an SOS call, such as the one on the lower middle, and it turned red, even a notification could go to our own doctor's cell phone. They could be notified by a cell phone that there's some urgent need for their patient, and it has yet to be attended to. So very, very strong capabilities, again, to drive improvements in the patient care. And then we have those periodic analytics and reports, and I'm showing certainly just one page and one slice of data. This would show the frequency of each buttons pushed by room by day, and so you can tell which patients are requiring or requesting the most attention or attentiveness or service from the nurses on any given day. But these reports are very robust. There's numerous slices of data, if I can say it that way, that allow for different parameters to be observed and understood, and again, all of which can help drive operational awareness and potentially influence and inform the operational decisions being made within the hospital wards. So this would, of course, lead to better overall patient care outcomes and experiences for the patients. It would certainly lead to a less stressed and most likely a happier nursing staff, which very, very critical. These are the people who are in charge of providing service to us as patients, and certainly by the very fact of being a patient, what we don't really need to have is a stressed nurse as the person attending to us. So anything we can do that can improve both our patient outcomes, our patient care, as well as reducing the stress on the nurses who are providing that patient care to us, seems like a very, very good idea. And this is just a very simple application of Internet of Things technology combined with wearables, which of course is a device within the IoT framework. This great combination of these devices allows us to do that. And now we've experienced two examples, both in a hospital context as well as in the restaurant or hospitality context. So now I'm going to bring this more to an example within the business context or an enterprise context, specifically working on a manufacturing or a production line in a large industrial facility. So if we were working on such a line, and this could be a very noisy environment, if you can kind of bring yourself mentally to that kind of environment, it can be very, very loud. It can be a type of environment where devices, even just such as cell phones, may not work. The noise level itself may make it untenable. But in fact, there could be scenarios where it would even not be allowed and permitted into that environment. But as you can probably imagine, a downtime on a line, such as any large manufacturing line, would lead to lost productivity and certainly, depending on the nature of what's being manufactured, but even in the worst case scenario, there's still significant costs being absorbed when a line is down. And anything we can do to expedite uptime on a manufacturing or production line would certainly be very beneficial to the bottom line of the business. So again, resolving failures that may occur in such an environment in as timely a fashion as is possible is absolutely critical to the overall productivity of the line, and of course that therefore would be an indicator of the financial performance of the manufacturing line. So these are really important issues, and while it might seem very simple, anything we can do to expedite uptime and mitigating those failures ahead of time would be certainly advantageous to the bottom line benefits of the business. And as I noted, a moment ago, certainly current communication technologies, they may not work very well in the noisy environment. They may outright be banned from the facilities. There are certainly facilities from a privacy and a security perspective where people are not permitted to take, say, cell phones, which would certainly, you could imagine, people might try to use a cell phone to notify somebody, but if they're not permitted or they're not really usable in this kind of an environment, something else needs to happen. And so we want to do everything in our capability to mitigate and reduce the lost downtime on a production line. So imagine if you were the line worker and you saw a failure happening on the line. And of course, if there was some way to immediately indicate to the right person the type of failure that you were noticing on the line, whether there's noise or not, anything you could do to immediately notify that individual that there's a need for their attention right away, and a specific individual based upon the type of failure you're noticing would be absolutely critical to minimizing the downtime. And so once again, we are looking at scenarios where you have this frequency of failure as well as the time from when the service is requested for the personnel to arrive to make the repairs being tracked. And like in the prior two examples that we discussed, here in the enterprise and kind of manufacturing environment, we would have programmatic escalations. And from a cost perspective, this is very, very critical. I mean, it's not a life and death situation as it could be in the hospital environment, but again, any downtime on a manufacturing production line can be very, very costly. So minimizing that and tracking that information in real time with programmatic escalations is very, very powerful to providing the fastest repair and response to these kinds of failures. So not only would we, with these capabilities and these tools, be able to provide better overall productivity, we would be able to minimize that costly downtime. And of course, Anything we can do to minimize, downtime, improve the performance of the line, ultimately will lead to happier workers. Happier workers, generally speaking, leads to a happier work environment, and all sorts of good things can come from that. So we want to do anything in our capability as line workers to be able to have these capabilities. So as the manufacturers, if we were able to provide our line and our manufacturing resources with these capabilities to be notified immediately of a failure on the production line, and we could therefore more rapidly deploy the right person to resolve that failure in less time. Again, you're seeing where the trend of this kind of storyline goes. If we were able to have that real-time dashboard showcasing the responsiveness to the failures, as well as incorporating these programmatic escalations so that nobody had to do anything in order for this to be escalated. It just happened if things were not attended to in a proper time. Automatically, you would see these escalations going out to the right folks. These would be very, very strong indicators of bottom line benefits for manufacturers. And likewise, in our prior examples, if in this example we were able to continuously collect and gather this data and analyze it to not only ensure the optimal use of our staff, which really in the prior two examples, a lot of it was around staffing, but here we could even notice optimal usage of both the machines as well as time. And again, with all of that kind of intelligence at our fingertips, we would therefore be able to inform our operational decision-making, look at areas where we were perhaps experiencing substantial number of failures. Maybe we would need to make a replacement of a part rather than continually trying to repair it. Or maybe we would need to make a change in something else along the manufacturing line that would really have been informed and indicated by the data that we've been collecting through these means. If that were true, we would have improved worker productivity. We would have overall improvement in performance of the line. And this is something any manufacturer, I doubt very much you could find a manufacturer that wouldn't say having these things would be beneficial to them in their own respective environments. So these are very powerful capabilities that, again, where does IoT and wearables come in and help improve production lines? Well, here, if in this environment we could summon specific service technicians on demand, regardless of the noise levels, and regardless whether or not cell phones were permitted or banned within the environment of the production line, that can help us to minimize the downtime on the line. And you can see two buttons here. These are different ones from different manufacturing environments. One would call a worker for tools, so in the tools settings along the manufacturing line. One could call for a worker for a crane in an environment where cranes are needing repair. They could specifically summon the worker for the cranes, and one can also call somebody into the breakdown area using the one on the left. And the device on the right, we would have the opportunity to call different service technicians to different areas across the production line, be the testing area, the printing area, or the placement area, or lastly in the finish area. So these would be four specific areas where, just based upon a push of a button, the appropriate service technician for each of these respective areas would be immediately notified. And they would be immediately notified, as in the prior examples, via a watch that they would be wearing within the environment. And here you can see that the breakdown area was summoned 10 seconds ago, or the tools area was summoned a minute and a half ago. And all of this is being tracked not only on the individual technicians' watches on their wrists, but also, again, as in our prior examples, in these real-time dashboards that can be on the computers. It could be on a mobile device, a tablet device, or a smartphone device. All of these dashboards can be viewed from just about any device that is needed, so that the the production line manager would have visibility to everything going on the line as it relates to the service of the line. So again, here you'd notice again, as in past examples, the color would be an indicator of how long it has been since the service was requested. And last, once again, as in the last examples, we get periodic reporting. This, again, just a very sample one-page This shows the type of requests against the number of requests over the hours of the day. So we have 24 boxes, or 22 boxes here that show the number of requests across each button on those devices that I showed earlier, and how many requests are happening and the time it takes to address those requests. So again, just one slice of the data, but very, very powerful in informing the operational decisions across the manufacturing line. So if we can leverage these types of technologies in a manufacturing environment, such as this example, we would, of course, improve the overall line performance and the worker productivity. So coming up towards the conclusion, if you, like I, believe that customer service and speed of service are competitive differentiators, then we've discussed three examples, three very different examples. One just a restaurant example, one, of course, the patient room in the hospital example, and a third enterprise example for the manufacturing and production line, where IoT combined with the wearables can be combined to bring competitive value to those environments. Very simple use cases, very simple application of IoT technologies as well. So if you believe that, then IoT can offer certainly competitive value. And anything we can do to arm the front line of our business, and the front line is always going to be different in each environment. Of course, it's the waiters and waitresses in the restaurant example, the nurses, of course, in the hospital example, and the production line resources in the manufacturing example. Anything we can do in these environments to arm our front line with the tools necessary for them to be able to contribute to improving service delivery is absolutely critical to bottom line success of an organization. Be it in customers' experience, be it in patient care, be it in bottom line results and minimizing downtime on a production line. Giving our front line these tools, very, again, simple use cases of an IoT solution, allows great improvements in service experiences and service ethics across these environments. So whether it's for guests, patients, line workers, or certainly there are countless others where the same type of technology solution can be deployed, today's solutions can bring great benefits to companies willing to make those changes and those investments. And I emphasize the word today here because these technologies are deployed. They're in existence now. IoT is still often thought of as a very good concept in very early stages of its deployment across different environments. But the examples I've just shown you are real-world examples that are installed in restaurants, in hospitals, in manufacturing environments for some top companies. And there's no real need to wait for companies. There's nothing holding companies back at the moment from making these investments and these changes. One thing I would say is hope is not a strategy. Waiting for something to happen that isn't likely to happen on its own is not going to result in the kinds of improvements that we think IoT and wearables can bring to various environments, such as the ones I've given examples of here. So hope is not a strategy. We believe IoT and wearables can be very, very powerful in a number of environments along the lines of the three examples I've given, but certainly in probably countless others. And with that, I'm wrapped up. I'd like to thank you again for your time today, and I'm going to take a look at the questions that have come in, and I will happily address these questions here. So the first question is controlling abuse of the system by either patients or customers at a restaurant. I will interpret the word controlling abuse as frequent pushing. So, for example, I'll discuss it in both the restaurant and patient environment. So in a restaurant environment, if, say, you're at dinner with your family and one of your children just is enjoying the little gadget sitting on the table and they keep pushing the button, the system has been designed so that regardless of the number of pushes to the button, the watch will only be notified once. So a waiter or waitress will not continuously be notified every single time a button is pushed. So the watches are paired to individual remotes. So the waiter or waitress of that table would only be notified once, And until they come to the table and press the cancel button, that's what closes out that request. So while there's that open request in the restaurant environment, until the waiter or waitress comes and provides the service and presses the cancel button on the device, there would only be one notification. Exact same thing in the patient environment. Now, the one thing I will differentiate in the patient environment is pushing the SOS button certainly can mean different things to different people. SOS is a relative term, I guess, and patients would need to be educated that they should probably only be pushing SOS in the case of a medical urgency or emergency, rather than pushing SOS because they dropped something out of their bed and they can't reach it to pick it up or something less urgent or less critical. So controlling abuse, certainly it's a great question. It's one where we have built into the systems that I've described here mechanisms to prevent some of that abuse. But that said, there is some education that does have to happen as well. So I think hopefully that addresses that question. The next question is, in many cases, a waiter or waitress has more than one table, and there's some fighting of sorts for their time. So how do you address this in an on-demand situation? So that's really an issue that is left up to the waiters and waitresses, or really the restaurant operators, because what we have seen on average is that there's somewhere between 5 and 8 tables. Of course, it is dependent on the restaurant environment, but somewhere between 5 and 8 tables that each waiter or waitress is assigned to. And these watches are paired to the devices at only those respective tables. So a waiter or waitress would only have, say, those 5 to 8 tables competing, if you will, for their time. And we have not seen anything that would indicate, reasons for concern about this device in any way providing a negative aspect to that experience. In fact, once again, in the patient care, we see that there's a prioritization that can happen. So a patient, for example, can say SOS, where someone else might just push, a cleaning request. Well, certainly the nurse will prioritize going to respond to that SOS call, and so it's an improvement. That's not to say that the person pushing the clean isn't important, but their prioritization is a little bit below that of someone needing medical urgency. So I haven't seen anything that would address causing a problem for this, competition for the time of the waiter or waitress or a nurse in those environments. And then another question has come in. Just reading the question, give me a moment. I think it's a question on minimizing the back and forth trips to a particular table, say in a restaurant environment, and how can we do that? If you can reduce the number of trips back and forth, you might be able to address some staffing, cut staff, or address staffing implications, which might, if you do use this to say we need less staff, that could certainly lead to a situation where it would cause worse experiences. So again, I would say that in the experiences we've had, and this is in substantially more than 100 restaurants that I know this technology has been deployed in, we have not seen any significant staffing cuts. We've more seen staffing optimization around number of tables serviced by each waiter or waitress, and even locations of tables. We saw in some environments where tables were kind of off the beaten track, maybe around the side of a particular hallway or something. They might have been attended to less, but now that they have the ability to kind of summon a server on demand, they're getting better service, or in some cases we've seen the restaurants realize that it might not be the best location for the table, and they've attempted to, the best of their ability, to reorder where those tables are. So those haven't seen any challenges with respect to staff being removed and creating less of a experience, or a lesser positive experience. Another question's come in with respect to the technologies that I've demonstrated and shown images of. Where have these technologies been developed? So these technologies are a technology that has been developed by a company out of southern India by the name of Revolutionize. And Revolutionize is developing various IoT solutions for different environments, in addition to the restaurant and hospital patient care, they've got other solutions that they're addressing that are quite powerful solutions for the different environments. But this particular technology has come from Strobolance. It's a very interesting technology. It's a client of Global Kinetics. I work with Strobolance and other early-stage technology companies to bring very compelling technologies to the United States markets. And this was one that I just saw tremendous potential for, and we've seen great uptake in it in the markets that it's been introduced into so far. So those are the only questions that I have at the moment, given the time we have. Again, I thank everybody for your time today, and hope you enjoyed spending the time with us and learning about these examples. Thank you all very, very much, and please don't forget to provide a rating when I close out the webcast so that the BrightTALK folks can understand how well this was received. Thanks again. I wish you all the best for the rest of the day. Bye now.